A very good day to you, Dr. Jacob and Mr. Justin. I'm Gan Song Song, and our group will be presenting on the topic of key influences of capitalism as an ideology on the law of the land in Malaysia. To start, let's briefly define what is capitalism. So, capitalism is not just as an economic system, but also as a legal ideology. It relies on legal structure that protects private property, enforces contract, and also allows individuals and companies to operate freely within the market. This can be supported by some classical legal philosopher who laid down the groundwork for this. For example, John Locke emphasized the natural right to private property, which is central to capitalist law. Hobbes, Bentham, and also Austin contribute the idea of law as a comma of sovereign enforced for social utility, which provided the stability for economic activity. So in Malaysia, capitalist legal principles shape many areas of law, which range from property ownership, business law, and contract enforcement to Islamic finance and international trade. So these influences create a hybrid legal system that blends Western capitalist structure with local values and state involvement, as we will explore further in the rest of this presentation. I will now explain how China's model of state-led capitalism has influenced Malaysia's legal and also economic framework. So, state-led capitalism is a system where the government plays a central role in guiding economic growth while still allowing private enterprise and also market competition. China is a clear example, which blend the socialist state control with capitalist tools like private investment, trade, profit making, and all of this within a tightly controlled legal environment. Now, let's look at how Malaysia mirrors this approach. Firstly, through government-linked companies, which is also known as GLC, main entities like Petronas Khazanah and also Tenaga Nasional are either fully or partially state-owned. These operate under the Companies Act, which compete in markets and also regulate like private firms. However, they serve national strategic goals. So this is very similar to China's state-owned enterprise, which function commercially but still remain state-directed. Next, we also see the influence in special economic zones, like Iskandar, Malaysia, and also the East Coast Economic Region. These are legally designated areas that offer tax breaks, investment incentives, and also infrastructure support. So these are much more like China's special economic zones, and laws in Malaysia such as investment and also land laws enable these zones to be operated as an engines of economic growth. Thirdly, Malaysia also actively use public-private partnership or PPPs, where the government and private sector collaborate on a large infrastructure projects. So this includes legal mechanisms such as concession agreements, build operate transfer models (BOT), and also specific procurement rules, and all of these are supported by national policy and also statutory frameworks. So from a jurisprudential angle, this shows that Malaysia's legal system does more than just enforce the right, and it also facilitates national development. We blend capitalist legal structure like private property and also contract law with a state-centric vision, where the law plays an instrumental role in driving economic progress, which is very similar to China's model. So in short, while Malaysia does not share China's political system, but it has adopted and adapted the key legal aspects of state-led capitalism to support the national goals. Thank you.
My name is Amir Ishad, and I'll be presenting the influence of social welfare capitalism in Malaysia. So, social welfare capitalism combines a free market economy with government policies that protect people's well-being. So, countries like Sweden, Norway, and Denmark use this model by supporting universal healthcare, education, and strong worker protections. So, the system shows that economic growth and social welfare can work together to create a fair and productive society. Malaysia is not a full social welfare state like those in Scandinavia, but it shows some influence of social welfare capitalism. So the country combines a free market policy with laws that protect workers and vulnerable groups. Over time, Malaysia has introduced various measures to support social well-being while still maintaining a mainly capitalist country economy. So one example of social welfare influence in Malaysia is the minimum wage law, which introduced in 2013. So it aims to reduce income inequality and ensure a basic standard of living for workers. So this shows the government's move to get involved in setting wages, which is a key part of social welfare capitalism. Although the wages are still modest, regular updates and enforcement show the government's effort to protect workers. Then we have Malaysia's EPF, which is Employees Provident Fund, and SOSO, Social Security Organization, are important parts of its welfare system. EPF is a mandatory retirement savings plan to support workers after they retire, while SOSO gives protection for work, injuries, disability, and death. So these programs show the government plays a role in protecting workers from the risk of market economy, which is a feature of social welfare capitalism. Malaysia has laws and policies that aim to balance economic growth with social protection. So for example, the Employment Act 1955 and Industrial Relations Act 1967 set basic rules for working hours, leave, and social workplace dispute, similar to those in developed countries. Progressive tax laws and government subsidies for healthcare and education show that the government supports fairer distribution of wealth, not just free market policies. So while Malaysia does not have the universal welfare system found in Scandinavian countries, it shows signs of social welfare capitalism through selective laws and protection. So this hybrid model helps Malaysia grow in the economy while also reducing some of the negative effect of a fully free market system. So as a conclusion, Malaysia blends capitalist practices with limited society protection like minimum wages, EPF, and SOSO. So this shows a practical approach to building a more balanced and inclusive society inspired by the welfare capitalism seen in developed nations. That is all from me. Thank you.
I'm THONG and I will be presenting on the influence of Sharia-compliant capitalism in Malaysia, specifically how capitalist principles have been adapted through Islamic legal financial structures. Capitalism, as we know, emphasizes private property, market freedom, and profit maximization. But in Islamic context, including Malaysia, this model is reshaped through the Sharia principles to form what we call the Islamic capitalism, a market system that upholds justice and ethical conduct. One clear influence of capitalism on Malaysian law is the development of Islamic finance, which uses capitalist tools like investment and entrepreneurship, but filter them through the Islamic norms. The most well-known is the prohibition of riba or interest. While interest drives conventional finance, Islamic law sees it as exploitative. Instead, Malaysia uses risk-sharing instruments like mudarabah, where the profits are shared between the investor and entrepreneur, and murabaha, a cost-plus sale. These alternatives serve similar purposes but ensure fairness, transparency, and mutual consent. To legally support this system, Malaysia has enacted framework like Islamic Financial Services Act 2013 and Bank Negara Malaysia has issued detailed Sharia guidelines for Islamic financial institutions. The Sharia Advisory Council, which play a quasi-legislative role by issuing fatwas that guide the financial practices. This had already shown how Islamic capitalism is not only religious but deeply institutionalized within the law. This duality where Islamic and conventional system operate side by side make Malaysia's legal system unique. We have a dual banking system with both conventional banks and fully Sharia-compliant Islamic banks. The legal structure ensures both models operate under strict regulatory oversight while accommodating different ideologies. This institutional dualism does more than coexist. It creates synergy, allowing Malaysia to become a global hub for Sharia-compliant finance. Our sukuk, the Islamic bonds, are widely issued and traded globally, showing how Malaysia exports a form of capitalism that is competitive but morally guided. Critically, Islamic capitalism doesn't aim for full equality but rather distributive justice. For example, the compulsory payment of zakat and prohibition of gara. excessive uncertainty to ensure that market behavior align with community welfare, not just individual gain. This blend of faith and finance reflects the flexibility of Islamic law. It is interpretive, not rigid. Through ijtihad or independent reasoning, jurists can issue rulings that meet the modern economic demands without compromising core Sharia principles. So, in conclusion, the influence of capitalism in Malaysia isn't simply about economic growth. It's about how that growth is achieved. Islamic law moderates the excesses of capitalism and reshaping it into a system where the profit is permissible, but the justice is also essential as well. Malaysia Sharia compliant capitalism proved that market can thrive without abandoning ethics, and legal framework can uphold both faith and financial success. That's all, thank you.
I am Rupadashni, and today I will be presenting about the influence of capitalism as an ideology on Malaysian law through the example of President Trump's 2025 tariffs, a case that highlights the complex relationship between economic ideology, executive power, and legal frameworks. In 2025, President Trump imposed tariff on steel and aluminium, invoking the International Emergency Economic Powers Act (IEEPA). This legislation, originally designed for national security emergencies, was used to justify economic intervention by passing Congress and concentrating power in the executive branch. Jurisprudentially, this can be explained through Roscoe Pound's sociological jurisprudence, which argues that law must reflect the social and economic realities of the time, and Carl Smith's sovereignty theory, which asserts that in times of crisis, the state has the right to suspend normative legal principle to safeguard its interests. These legal philosophical shifts provide an important reference point for understanding Malaysia's own economic model, which combines capitalist legal structures with strong elements of state control. Malaysia operates within a common law tradition where core capitalist ideas such as protection of private property, enforceability of contracts, and support for open markets are legally upheld. However, Malaysian law also reflects a pragmatic form of capitalism, heavily influenced by national interests, social justice policies, and executive discretion. For instance, Bumiputra affirmative action policies established through legal instruments like the New Economic Policy and EP reflect an international intervention in market dynamics to achieve socio-economic restructuring. Similarly, the laws like the Price Control and Anti-Profiteering Act allows the state to interfere with price mechanisms, demonstrating a willingness to override free market logic in favor of stability and equity. What this indicates is that capitalism in Malaysia functions with a uniquely Malaysian context, where capitalist mechanisms are balanced with legal political tools designed to prioritize nation building, social harmony, and economic sovereignty. Therefore, Trump's tariffs are not just a US anomaly. They reflect a broader trend. Capitalist states, including Malaysia, have adapted their legal system to academic selective intervention, nationalist economic strategies, and executive-led policy shifts, all under the banner of capitalist ideology. Conclusion: the legal response to capitalism in Malaysia is influenced by the same ideological tension seen in the Trump's tariff case, a balancing act between classical liberal values and practical need for the state control. This reveals that capitalism, as reflected in law, is not a fixed model, but a flexible framework shaped by sovereignty, culture, and national interests. That's all from our group. Thank you.